Hey guys, welcome back. This is where we left off last time with our basic learning of HTML, but now we're going to go a step further and start building our own online resume. So this is a layout that I did for a resume. This is the one we're going to be using for the class. So the link to this is in the notes, but you can just go ahead and grab it and you'll be able to refer back to this as we're developing. So this is what it's going to look like when we're all done. And you can play with this and even create new different layouts for your own resume once we're done. You'll have the knowledge to do that, so that'd be pretty cool. So let's get started. Just looking back at what we had from last time, we had this index.html file, which I've now cleared out because we're going to start again. So, but the thing is here, we want it to be inside resume folder. So this is just going to help us keep things organized. So if you want to just go ahead and create a resume folder on the desktop and then put that index file inside of it. So then we can just open it up in Sublime and it knows it's an HTML file because you can see right down here in the bottom right hand corner we already had it saved as one last time. So when we're starting a new HTML file, Sublime gives us a really nice shortcut. If it knows that it's an HTML file, and it does because we saved it as index.html, we can just type HTML and hit the tab key. And what Sublime will do is it will generate this basic structure for us. So let's just walk through each of these parts. We kind of talked about this last time, but HTML just wraps your entire document and tells the browser that it's HTML. The head is where you kind of put information about your site, and we'll add to this as we need to. And then title. So we can put in a title right now, actually. We'll just call this John Doe's resume. All right. And again, make sure we save that. So you'll notice if your document's unsaved, so if I type something in here like this turns to a circle when you're not hovering over it. And then as soon as you save it, so I'll go ahead and save it right now, the circle goes away. So that's a really easy way to know if you've saved what you're working on or if you still need to do that. So okay, so let's just make sure that we're editing the right document and we're looking at the right document in Firefox. So if we go back to this Learning HTML tab, you can see that this is what we were working on last time. So remember we put this file inside the resume folder. So we'll just add that. Okay, so nothing's on the page, just like we would expect, but John Doe's resume is here at the top. So let's go back to Sublime. So now that we've got that set up, we need to think about the basic structure of the page. If we look at Firefox, you can kind of see that there are going to be 5 main sections of this page. You're going to have the header, which contains this image and your name and your title. And then you're going to have the objective section, which contains a headline and some text underneath it. The education section with the headline and text underneath it. The work experience section with headline and text underneath it. And the footer with your relevant contact information. Some resumes will be set up differently than this, but this is what we're going to use for ours. So we have these 5 main sections. So in HTML, when you're going to divide a document, you use something called a div tag. So if we go, this is back at our HTML reference. If we go and look at what a div tag is, we can see that, okay, it's the generic container for flow content. So basically it says it can be used to group elements for styling purposes and whatnot. So this is what we're going to be using for our sections. So like we said, we're going to have 5 sections. So let's just set up that basic structure right now. So first of all, we want a div for just to wrap the entire thing, to be like kind of an outside container. So remember, we have to close our div tags like that. So that's going to be our outside container. And then within that, we're going to have a div for the header, a div for the objective, a div for education, a div for work experience, and a div for the footer. Okay, so now we have our 5 sections. So you might be thinking, okay, this looks great, but how do I tell which ones are which? I just said this is for the header and the footer and all that stuff, but how do I know? So let's go back to our reference and see what we can figure out about that. So let's look down at some examples here. That's just a generic div like we have. But up here, if we look in the description, it says they can use the class or ID attributes. So this is where you can tell your browser what you want your divs to be identified as. So this will be important as we get into styling more in the next couple episodes. But basically, if you want to uniquely identify an object, you can use an ID. So this ID is going to be ID equals header. And we can do the same thing. ID equals objective. ID equals education. ID equals work. And then ID equals footer. And let's go ahead and say that this is ID equals container as well, so that we know that that is what's going on. So this is more for us at this point, but it'll become more apparent why we need to do this when we get into styling some of the things. So now go ahead and save it and see what Firefox says about that. Go back to John Doe's resume. We hit refresh. Okay, and so nothing is actually in here yet. We've put a lot of divs in, but we haven't actually put any text in. So if you go in here and you go to Tools, Web Developer, and then Page Source, you can actually look at the source code of the page, and you can see here. So here's the source, and it says, okay, yep, I have all these divs in here, and we're good to go. So now that we've got our structure set up, let's start putting in some content. Alright, so now we're ready to add some content. If you go back and look at the layout that we're going to be using, the first thing that we need to include is this our headshot. So in this case, we just have a headshot placeholder, which I will link on in the notes as well. But we need to get that set up in our project. So first of all, let's grab the actual file and put it in our resume folder. Okay, and because we want to stay organized, we're going to make a separate folder just for images. So we're going to go say new folder for images. And then we're going to rename this actually. We'll just name it headshot.png. Move it into the image folder. Okay. And we're good to go. So let's drop that into Sublime. So we're going to be in our header here. And remember, we learned last time that all we have to do is give ourselves an image tag and specify the source. So the source, if you think about where the index folder is, we need to go into the image folder, and then it's going to be headshot.png. So that's referencing the image that we just dropped into that folder. And remember, we want to give our images an alt tag. So our alt tag in this case could be John Doe. And there we go. So let's save it and check in Firefox to make sure we didn't miss anything. And there we go. Our headshot's showing up. So that's good. Let's keep going on. So what do we have next? Next we have our name and our title. So for right now, let's just use the header tags that we looked at last time. Let's just see what size we think will work. We're going to mess around with styling later, but for now, let's just use H3. So if you don't remember what the H3 tag is, you can go back here to our reference, and you can look them up. So in this case, we're going to be down here in GH, and we click on H3. And it says heading elements implement 6 levels of document headings. So we're going to be using the third heading. H1 is the most important and H6 is the least. So we're going to be right in the middle. So let's just look at this layout again. So we need an H3 that's John Doe and an H3 that says web developer. So go back to Sublime. Make sure to always close your tags. And then close the H3. And then another one. Close your H3. Save in Sublime. Go to Firefox. Hit refresh. And there you go. That's showing up. So that's good. And again, if you want it to be bigger, you can always change these to H2s. And it'll get bigger, but we're going to worry a lot more about styling in the next couple episodes. If you want to check it, save in Sublime and refresh in Firefox, and you'll notice they got a little bit bigger. So that's cool. So it looks like we have all the content in for our header. So let's move on to the next section, objective. So if we go, we see we need a header objective, and then we need this description text. So we'll go back to Sublime, and we'll go into our objective div, because this is now a new section we're working with. So we want to have a header that's the same importance as our other big text. So our header here is going to be objective. And then below it, we need to just have our regular text. So we're going to just use a p tag, because this is just regular text. And we're going to just bring in our text from Firefox. So find a job in the web development industry where I can work with cutting-edge technologies to deliver value to clients. So let's just bring that in. And again, it doesn't matter so much what this says, because this is just placeholder text for now. You're going to insert your own text with your own resume. But alright, so save in Sublime, go back to Firefox, and we'll hit refresh. And there we go, we now have our objective there. So let's keep going. We have our education section. So again, we're going to go into the education div, put in our header, and then we're going to put in our text. So it's important to look at the layout for this. So we have, it looks like these are two separate sections here, it looks like, because one you see is indented a little bit further. So those are going to actually be two separate p tags. So let's do that. And you can go ahead and go back to Firefox and look at it. Okay, and then we need the other one. Okay, so save in Sublime, refresh in Firefox. And there we go. So that content is in there as well. What's next? We have work experience. So this is going to be interesting as well. So again, we have our work experience header, and then we have this level where it lists the previous job title and the dates worked. And then we have the description. So let's just go ahead and we'll start obviously with the header. And then we're going to need a p tag for the job title, which in this case is the organization and the job title. Make sure it's inside the p tag. Okay. And then we're going to have our dates in here too. So August 2010 to January 2011. Okay. And then we're going to have a separate p tag for our description, which in this case is this part right here. So, worked with CEO Mark Zuckerberg to improve the user experience on the site and increase conversions by 10%. Let's just drop that in. Okay, save in Sublime, tab over and refresh in Firefox, and there we go, that content's in. So we're going to be doing much the same thing for the next section with Google. So what we can actually do is we can just copy and paste this. Cool, and then we just need to modify our content once again to fit our layout. So web developer Google Plus, January 2011 to March 2014. Okay, and what did we do there? We worked on elevating the Google Plus platform. Okay. So again, save in Sublime, go over here and refresh. Okay, cool. So now we have a second section under Work Experience. Alright, so let's go back and look at our layout and see what we have left. It looks like all that's left is our footer. So this is going to be a web link to our GitHub profile, which is something we'll talk about in the next episode. And this is going to be a link as well, so that when you click on it, you can send an email to John Doe, and then your phone number. So let's get that set up. So we're going to go into our footer here, and we're going to have links. So let's look at what our link actually is. GitHub.com/John Doe. Okay. So we want to, first of all, put in where the link's actually going to go. And then within the A tag, we want to say what the text should display for the link. So save in Sublime. We can go over here and refresh in Firefox. And if we scroll down, there's our link right there. Looking good so far. What's next? We have our email address. So for this, we're going to use what's called a mail to link. So it works exactly like any other kind of a link, except in the href, we need to say where we're going to mail it to. So mail to john@johndoe.com. So let's see, it's doing some weird things with highlighting. Looks like I put an extra bracket in here. So that's a nice thing about Sublime too, is it'll show you if there's some weird things going on. So we save that and we go to Firefox and we can see how that's going to look. Okay, and again, it's right there. So when someone clicks on this link, what it'll do is it'll open their default email program and automatically put your mail address in the to field so that they can send an email to you really easily. So just finishing up, what's the last thing? It's our phone number. So we're going to get into linking this later, but for now we'll just put this inside a p tag. Okay. So save in Sublime and refresh. And there we go. So all of our content is now in our website. But as you can probably see, it doesn't look really a lot like this at all. So in the next couple episodes, we're going to be tackling how to style this content and make it look like what we want and turn it into more of a real and exciting styled website.